Hello and welcome back to Porcelain Peak, Strange and Scary podcast featuring Chop Talk, trivia, and deep dive main discussions into the odd and unusual. I am one of your hosts, Tone, and I'm joined by Nora Jones.
Or Nora Jones, eh?
A.K.A. John. It's Australian for John. And Anthony. How are you guys?
Can you call me Angry Anthony?
Angry Anthony.
From now
Yeah.
on?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Thanks.
We need one. What's a J mad? Think about it. We'll come back to it. Anyway, this week for Chop Talk, we're going to share some news about the Haunted Mansion here. The shirt, not the person. And then we're going to play trivia, see if Anthony and I could break our tie. And then for our main discussion, we are doing March Madness, talking about the Mad Max franchise. Starting off with the Mad Max.
The OG.
The OG.
The least mad of the Maxes.
He's pretty mad.
Hey,
I would be too if
Yeah.
the events that took place in this film had taken place to me.
we'll get into it, but jeering John.
Jeering?
Jeering. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I like that. Well, that's what we're doing. We
I was thinking jangry. Just like
stay tuned and we'll go ahead and get started with Chop Talk.
Why don't you take an axe and chop it open?
All right. Well, how are you fellas? Huh? How you doing, huh, John? No.
Or Nora Jones. I'm doing well.
I don't even remotely understand the bit that you guys are doing.
It's
So
Australian.
Like, because you say
is Nora
instead of-
Jones Australian?
No, but
No, but
no, or Nor.
Like, that's how they say no. It sounds like no.
What are you gonna do, baby?
Okay. I get it.
Oh, no.
How you doing, John?
It's good when you have
Do
to
well.
explain.
I'm doing well.
Those are the
Very
funniest bits.
excited about the fact that they announced that there's gonna be an Elden Ring DLC.
Oh. You're all.
Can you seemed so disappointed that was the exciting news. You should do like a reverse of that handshake you just did. I take it back.
I went ahead and turned that frown right side up.
Well, that's
Turn that smile upside down.
I did, yeah. It really disappointed me there.
that's cool, I guess.
Yeah, we're happy for you.
if you're into nerd shit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just intimidated
And how
by
are you?
Elden Ring. Okay, I'm just intimidated. I am actually not that angry. I'm actually doing pretty great. Excited to be here and talk about a decent film called Mad Max. But
Some newsies?
we got some news to talk about.
Yeah, Mandalorian Season 3 is out now.
Right now, Disney Plus.
Yeah, time of recording. So by the time you're hearing this, it might even be episode 2 already. I don't know when it started. Was it today?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, just the first episode is out, but do be sure
Doobie.
you do be. Scooby Dooby, do be sure that if you have not checked out, I think it's episodes like 5, 6, and 7 of the Book of Boba Fett.
You'll be very confused.
Yeah, make sure you check those out because this show doesn't do very much in this first episode of
Is it after that?
when this episode takes place. Yeah.
Okay.
And it doesn't do a great job of telling you, oh, by the way, there's 3 episodes of stuff that happened with Mandalorian and Grogu that you need to check out. But I'll reserve my judgment on how I feel about the show until more episodes are out. It's hard to tell from a first episode, or how I feel about this season, I guess. But
Yeah.
I was excited that it was back. I didn't know, and then I just turned on my TV, and I have like the up next, and it was like Mandalorian Season 3. And I was like, what? What do you mean?
Excuse you?
So I put it on immediately, and I wasn't bored by it.
Yeah.
it's the continuing great year of Pedro Pascal.
I would say you don't need to watch the entirety of Book of Boba Fett. I would say if you can catch a recap episode for like the first 3, like have some like
It's one of
like
the
a
choose
YouTube
your own
video.
adventure books. Just
Yeah.
choose the adventure where the Mandalorian's in the show and Boba Fett's not.
Yes, 100%.
But you mentioned earlier
Haunted Mansion.
Haunted Mansion, a little spooky coincidence that John was wearing that that sweater. I thought that he had seen the poster, but now he has because I done showed it to you.
Are there stickers that people get for the backs of their cars that are characters from the Haunted Mansion?
100%. Yes.
Oh my!
The little family stickers.
I've always wondered what that is, and I'm basing it off that shape. I'm always
You're like, why? why do they have their child's head in a box?
I think it's like that, but it's like a group of people, and for me it was.
I think it's the ones that show up at the end of the ride. The one that does like
the wandering
hitchhiking thing.
ghosts will follow you.
Okay,
home.
I've wanted to take a picture of it and be like, "What are you?" So yeah, that answers it. Way to go. Thanks.
Well,
anyway, poster.
Speaking of the Haunted Man, son, there is a new poster. I don't know why I went into that voice. There is a new poster for...
I thought the Haunted Man son was the like working title for Insidious.
Yeah. I'm just gonna keep going. Try to get to the news. Haunted Mansion. There's a new poster. I showed it to you guys before we recorded. What did you think? First impressions.
It's a poster.
It's a poster. It's got a person facing away from the camera with something ahead of them. It's ominous.
Let me see it again.
Ominous.
Oh, dude, that is a poster.
Yeah, so it looks like it's got a little bit of an Inception vibe. So maybe the vibe, which we'll get more of tomorrow, because that's when the first trailer drops for this. But it looks like it's going to be like, maybe some kids get trapped in the Haunted Mansion, and much like the ride, shit starts to grow and change, and the heads follow you. And
do we know what it's about? I mean, do we know who's in it?
Hey, no Eddie Murphy, no dice for me.
But wasn't that movie not good?
It was not good.
There's a shit ton of people in this. I think Jamie Lee Curtis is in it. She plays the chick in the ball. The ball chick.
Shit,
Madam Ball.
It's like Leota or something.
Yeah,
Right.
I do think it is.
Yeah,
Madam
Ray
Leota.
Liotta.
R.I.P. Now he's in the Haunted Mansion. That's a rough joke. Love you, Ray. Also, Jared Leto is in it as that dude.
And I'm out.
The Hatbox Man.
No prosthetics.
So yeah, we don't know too much about what it's about outside of it's based on the Disney ride, The Haunted Mansion. They're still trying to do this.
Yeah, so, Pirates hit, and then Tomorrowland did not.
And Haunted Mansion did not.
I think that it was like... I think it made money, though. Did it or no?
I don't know, but I like things
Giants.
about that Haunted Mansion movie just because of the vibe. Because the Haunted Mansion is my favorite Disney ride.
They need to just double up on It's a Small World. Let's go. It's just an hour and a half of the same 30-minute clip.
Yeah, pitch that to Disney, and I'm sure they'll pay you the big bucks.
It's a small world after all.
Yep, that's perfect.
Well, let's move out of Haunted Mansion territory and move into something else that's kind of creepy involving kids. Stranger Things. You guys heard about this? You seen this?
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen every season.
Well,
How many are there? 4?
yeah, coming up on 5 and final, right?
Mm-hmm. Fifth
In
and
between
final.
seasons 4 and 5,
Uh-oh.
the next one, there is
That was
going.
that was 1 and 2, but the weirdest way to show
Is that the
1 and 2.
subtitle?
That's the one. That's
Season
the,
5, the next one.
that's the way that they know that I'm secretly a spy in Inglourious Bastards, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because I count my 2 wrong. Stranger Things is getting a live stage show, an official live stage show called Stranger Things: The First Shadow, that is going to take place in 1959,
Weird.
and is apparently going to give some more background to like the early days of Hawkins before it got upside down,
Upside Dizzity.
Weird.
back when it was right side up, and probably less interesting. So not sure what that's going to be about. But also, none of us live close to a place where we could see this. But if you live in the LA area, where I'm sure this is going to be, or maybe New York, then look out for it if you're into Stranger Things. It's a light news week, so I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel. Warner Brothers came out with some news that's not DC related.
Oh shit! You better warn him, brother.
They have announced that they want to turn the Lord of the Rings franchise into a Star Wars level saga franchise of expanded movies and TV shows and all kinds of materials.
So Amazon doesn't have that? Oh, that's why they had to do like a weird...
Yeah, so Amazon's going to continue with their stuff and do another season of Rings of Power.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the rights deal between like who owns Lord of the Rings and who owns certain aspects of it is like really weird and complicated, and we could get into it at a different time. But
Oh, okay. So they still have Lord of the Rings.
yeah,
I heard that Circus, Andy, did a audio book reading of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be fucking fantastic because he does like voices and shit. And I've heard, because those books can drag, that like he helps you stay awake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
I mean,
sounds fucking fantastic.
I'm sure he's great. It's just that I would be waiting the whole time for him to get to Gollum scenes.
Does a different voice. Like,
I don't-
my precious.
I don't know how I feel about this because I have a tenuous relationship with the Lord of the Rings trilogy as a whole, and then really didn't enjoy The Hobbit at all. And I heard from many sources that Rings of Power was pretty boring.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there needs to be any more exploration unless they have some good ideas. And it sounds like their good ideas have been show fantasy world, make money. And that's basically been it.
Yeah, I mean, DC's kind of tanking. The Harry Potter franchise, well, Fantastic Beasts franchise is kind of tanking. Like, now they're going to try to destroy Lord of the Rings, which they already are on their way, because I think only the first Hobbit movie was well received, if that.
Yeah, so Peter Jackson did comment on this. He said that he is being kept in the loop on all of the Lord of the Rings stuff that happens. I guess I don't know if that's more of just like a formality of like, hey, let's just make sure he's in the loop because everybody loves Peter
There's a
Jackson's
ring.
Lord of the Rings.
No,
But
they're Jackson on his Peter. Let him know.
Oh my god.
I was thinking you were laughing at in the loop.
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
a ring.
me too.
Yeah,
I thought you were being clever.
the much more clever thing. Yeah,
No.
definitely.
No, I was being crass. I'm fine with this. I've accepted my fate.
But I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that Peter Jackson's going to have any involvement in this stuff, and probably won't, because he did fucking 6 of them, and probably is like, okay, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can see that there is potential in this world to fall. I mean, it's just like with Star Wars, or which is what they're trying to ape off, or even something like Game of Thrones that now has House of the Dragon, which I thought the first season was fucking fantastic. So it shows that, like, there is room in here, and it really just does come down to, do you have a good enough idea? Do you have a good enough and talented enough people involved? You can make really great stuff. It's just more the mentality behind this that is just exhausting, because this is what all of the news we talk about pretty much is these days.
How will we expand to cool universe?
Yeah,
thing?
it's like here's this other property that the studio has now decided they're going to turn into an interconnected, expanded universe because Marvel did it.
To milk.
But to spin off of that and segue into a bit of news that I didn't actually have written down, but I had mentioned to you guys, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, not doing too hot. It initially on its first weekend had a pretty good opening, but it did have, I believe, tied with Eternals, the lowest cinema score, which is when they poll people who see it on opening night. So you get the actual, I thought I turned you off. You that's right.
The head nod, the subtle head nod.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. Trying to get back on track.
Yeah.
So it got I think a C cinema score, which is tied with Eternals for the lowest of any Marvel movie. They tend to be up in the A+ to B+ range.
I didn't think it was the worst one.
Yeah, I'm gonna hard disagree.
Hard.
Well, so the reason I say that is because the cinema score does tend to be a pretty good indication of what's going to happen in a second weekend, because that, if it has a good cinema score, that means people are going to tell other people that they enjoyed it and that they liked it, and word of mouth is how these movies, obviously keep going for a decent run. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I don't know why I keep just saying the whole fucking title, but it had a 69% drop between weekend 1 and weekend 2, which is one of the worst, not only in the MCU but of Marvel movies in general, including things like the X-Men movies and the Fantastic Fours and the Blades and everything. So
That's a big ass drop.
yeah, it had a monumental drop for the MCU, and this is getting people to even further push the discussion of, are people even interested in Marvel stuff anymore? Does it, because it seems like the part of the reason that people haven't been excited for this is that people are generally, it seems, pretty exhausted, and they went through all of Phase 4 kind of going, all right, I mean, you fucking spent 10 years on the Infinity Saga and you told a fucking awesome story. What's next? And then when they saw Phase 4 and saw, oh, okay, doesn't really seem like what's next. People just kind of lost interest, and for Ant-Man to not, it's not just another Ant-Man movie like these kind of filler movies. Quantumania was supposed to be like
It's the kicking off number 5, yeah.
thing for Phase 5 that was supposed to show, this is Kang, this is what we're concerned with, this is what's going on with that. get excited, and people came out of it going, see, like on the excitement level, and the money reflects that.
Yeah.
And Kevin Feige has already said that they are putting a halt on their TV productions, and the Marvels got pushed a few months, so it was originally supposed to come out this summer. Now it's coming out in November, I think. So they pushed that a little bit further to give it a little bit more space from Ant-Man. And Feige said that they're, based on what they're seeing from people's interest in, I assume the shows, even though we don't see numbers for the Disney Plus shows, but based on the numbers for those shows and for this, he has said that they are going to start slowing things way down and try to put more space between projects and not fill up so much space with TV shows and stuff, because they can tell that people are starting to get pretty tired of it.
I think there's too much now. Like, yeah, the 18-plus movies was a lot when we were doing it back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
But at least it was all building to something, and now it's like, now you have to watch these shows and these movies, and they don't always go anywhere, so that's tough.
I mean, I'm behind on, I think, at least 2 or 3, as I haven't watched Hawkeye, I haven't watched She-Hulk, I didn't watch Miss Marvel, so I still have to watch those things before the movies come out.
Yeah, I didn't finish Miss Marvel,
Me either.
and I never watched Black Widow or the Eternals. So I have a couple holes in places.
I mean, you're not gonna miss anything from Black Widow. The only thing they do there is introduce a new Black Widow. But that's what Phase 4 was.
From what I've heard,
I
you're
already
also
saw
not
what they're
gonna,
going to do with that in Hawkeye. So
I've also heard that you're not going to miss much from the Eternals either, because that landed like a nice wet fart.
Well, I mean, it might be worth having a big, longer form discussion about this at some point in the future, but it does seem like, the world has also changed. Like when these movies first started coming out, and for those first, 10 years or so, we were just getting into the whole like streaming age thing. And I think people saw movies in general as more of an event. And also there was like 1 of these movies a year to 2 of these movies a year. And it was just the movies. And you felt like it was manageable to go, okay, I'm going to watch Thor and Captain America. And I'm going to, you look at Phase 1 and it's so tiny in comparison to what we've got going on now. It was just Iron Man, Iron Man 2, Thor, Incredible Hulk, Captain America, Avengers. So like 6 movies. And it was easy to be like, okay, I'm keeping up with that. I know what's going on in the world. It's not too crazy. And now I think people within the age of streaming are watching so much shit. They have so much other stuff going on. And then on top of that, having to be like, okay, so I got to watch these 5 TV shows and, these 10 movies if I'm going to understand what's going on. People are just like, I know for me, it feels overwhelming.
Yeah. And to kind of piggyback on that, when this started, those were spectacles, those were reasons to go to the movies. These streaming services, like you were saying, hadn't really taken off quite yet, but now the content that you're getting on streaming, although maybe less budget, is still comparable to what you're going to get in theaters.
I also think that now that we're in a territory where all of the stories have felt like they've had to get bigger and more spread apart and further away from like plain old Earth.
That's how I want Jonathan Majors, by the way, bigger and spread apart.
Yeah. I think
that's
that
what I took from Ant-Man.
I think that we're in a place where it's so far removed from what Earth is that now everything feels kind of the same. It's just like homogenized, like bright colors type of like weird like space shit. Mm-hmm. And I think
interdimensional stuff.
Yeah. But either way, like, yeah, like it looks cool, but like it all kind of blends together. Mm-hmm. And I think that puts you in a place where you're like, I mean, I'm gonna watch the same thing. I just watched
Strange.
Yeah, I just watched Strange, and that was very similar. Mm-hmm. And I think that what's missing is Captain America. Captain America was always like a very grounded movie, as far as like Marvel is concerned, about as grounded as you can get, of just like a somewhat real human story.
Well, Iron Man was for the most part too.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say is like, yes, Captain America, but also Iron Man.
Yeah.
I think it's missing both of them because Tony Stark. Like you go back and watch those, all of the Iron Man movies, but like especially that first one, and it's obviously riding along with the Dark Knight and things like that. That was still a time when it was like, hey, let's try to make people believe that Iron Man could exist. It feels like Tony Stark built this in a cave with a box of scraps, like, you know, and it feels, you know, he connects it to the real world, just like you said, you know, Captain America does. I think Captain America does get a little bit more fanciful with the Tesseract stuff, but and Red Skull and all that. But yeah, no, I totally agree, because I've been going back and rewatching those early MCU movies because I've been trying in my head to kind of figure out where the separation is and where the magic got lost. Yeah, and then we've talked about this before, but I think also a big problem is that they have yet to show us why we should care about anything in this like multiverse saga, because death doesn't seem to mean anything, especially for, you know, I mean, for anybody who doesn't really know what Kang's bit is, I don't know how much of a spoiler it is to say that there are, I mean, if you've seen Loki and, you know, you're looking at this, there are basically infinite variants of Kang from all over the multiverse. And so you spend a whole movie getting acquainted with the guy who's supposed to be your bad guy, and then they could say like, okay, we're just going to kill him off and have a different Kang come in, or we're going to kill this one off and have a different Kang come in, or what, you know, whatever, you know, and it doesn't feel like
no stakes.
There's no stakes.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, technically the Thanos that we got in Endgame is actually a different Thanos than the one we got in Infinity War, but because they kill him in Endgame and then his like past version. Anyway, this has gone on for long enough talking about this. Like I said, we can have a whole discussion about this on the side. But
one thing else I want to say, kind of looking at it as the bigger picture, Marvel and Disney, what they did is they created this box office formula and then have since taken over the box office, and now they're destroying the box office. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, well, people went to the movies to see these big spectacle movies because you kept producing them and you kept making them pretty good. And now those aren't working. So what's going to happen to the fucking box office when people don't want to go see these massive movies anymore?
They'll go see Cocaine
fatigue.
Bear.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe,
that's really like
crazy,
Cocaine Bear. Like more
it.
people were interested in seeing that and telling their friends. Like, I mean, you told us like go see Cocaine Bear.
Mm-hmm. I highly recommend seeing it in theaters too. Like it's just fun.
See, and that's what I've been hearing from a ton of people. Haven't heard that about Ant-Man. And even if people liked it, I haven't heard people saying like you got to go fucking see it in theaters. You know, and Avatar was that way too. People are doing that, but with non-Marvel movies now. Like people are just like, oh, I don't really care about Ant-Man, but I'll go see Cocaine Bear. I'll go see Avatar for the 5th time. And it used to be like, and I was like this too. I went and saw the first Avengers movie, I think like 6 times in theaters. I would see each of the Spider-Man movies like 4 or 5 times.
I think I saw Endgame like 4 times in theaters. Yeah.
And now I'm like, like having to go out to the theater to watch like a 2.5 hour Marvel movie. I'm just like, so, and I think most people feel that way, and they would rather go watch a more digestible, you know, Cocaine Bear, where they don't. And that was the whole joke from that TikTok that I told you about, where the guy was like, oh, you don't need to know what the post-credit scene from such and such movie was to enjoy Cocaine Bear. You just need to know the words cocaine bear. There's a bear on cocaine. Or, you know, or people want to go see something like Terrifier 2. Like they're just not interested in the Marvel thing. And like you said, the Marvel has been able to keep doing this for 31 movies now because they seemed invincible. Every movie they came out with, they would underproject their numbers, and it would always exceed what they, outside of something like maybe Eternals, it would always exceed their expectations. And so they were able to just keep pumping them out, and now they finally hit this movie that is basically spelling out they can't sustainably do that anymore. So
I think that it'll be interesting to see what happens with Guardians. I think that Guardians so far has been a box office darling and has been a critical darling.
It will. It'll be fine.
I think that if it comes with the
actually
same,
one of my relatives, box office darling.
Yeah.
If
it comes with the same fire, I think that it'll do well, and it will at least kind of quell some of the like, is Marvel over conversation.
Well, that's what I've heard people saying, is that they imagine that Guardians is going to do kind of what James Gunn's The Suicide Squad did, where it'll go like, oh shit, this isn't actually, you know, it'll be a little blip.
And then,
you know, speaking of the blip, it'll be a little blip of, oh shit, this is good. And then they'll go back to, you know, unless Marvel does something after Guardians to continue people's excitement and keep that ball rolling, it's just going to be another, because I imagine Guardians is going to be pretty fucking good and it looks really emotional. But it'll be something like Spider-Man No Way Home did excellently outside of being around Christmas time and people weren't going to the movies as much at the time that it came out. But it did excellently. But again, I think that was a little blip in phase 4, you know, and not necessarily indicative of what that phase was going to be like. But I do want to get to our final piece of news just because it is something that I wanted to mention that I found to be a big deal this week. A little bit sad. We've talked a lot about Creature from the Black Lagoon and Terry Gilliam on the show. Well, the original performer for the Creature from the Black Lagoon, Rico Browning, passed away a couple days ago, and he was the last of the living Universal Monsters actors. So they have all officially passed beyond the veil into the haunted mansion. But since his last name is Browning, thought maybe we could give him an extra special little shout out during the Todd Browning Awards if those roll up again at any
Give
time.
him the Browning Lifetime Achievement
Goes
for
to
best Browning.
That's fucking funny. Yeah.
Award for best Browning. it's just him, Todd Browning, and what's her name, Emily Browning, the actress.
And that character from Final Destination.
Yeah,
Alex Browning.
Alex Browning. Yeah.
There we go. All right, cool. Well, that's going to wrap it up for Top Talk. We hope that you enjoy that. Sorry, I feel like we always get a little bit long-winded when it comes to box office, and especially when it comes to Marvel box office. But we'll go ahead and get started with some trivia.
That Christmas house of wax, the fog, piranha. It's one of those, right? Right?
Alrighty, before we get started with Trivial Pursuit, we had a bonus trivia question from last week. Want to remind us what it was, and I have one for this week.
Oh shit. Okay,
Okay,
I'm excited.
sure.
So last week's trivia question was, what Disney film
Oh yeah,
was the first to feature a fart?
Yeah.
You guys had a couple
I
guesses.
said Flubber.
I said The Great Mouse Detective.
The Great Mouse Detective. Well, we did have some guesses from one person in the audience, and that was Ben from Extreme Horror Replay. Thank you, Ben, for participating. His first guess, he nailed it.
Nice.
The correct answer is The Lion King. It's Pumbaa.
Yeah.
He literally has a line in the song about his friends.
How you got out downhearted.
Yeah, and his friends being
Every time that
downwind because he
yeah.
farts. So it was The Lion King, but it was really funny because Ben's other guesses, he was like, yeah, if it wouldn't have been Lion King, my other guesses were 101 Spotted Dogs or those dwarves. so I was like, I'm just going to refer to that movie from now on as 101 Spotted Dogs because that's pretty fucking funny.
Want to do some shout outs? We got some new subscribers over on YouTube that we forgot to mention. So Erica Grant, thanks for subscribing.
From Horror Cafe Podcast. They also have a YouTube channel where she is playing the Resident Evil games, I think. I know she's playing some horror games, so go over and check out there.
biting our shit.
Yeah,
No.
because no one's ever played those.
Yeah,
before.
never. Not once. It wasn't a category that definitely had, like, at least 20 other people streaming games.
And then we got Cosmic 47. So I don't know if maybe that's the streaming thing or whatever. But anyway, shout outs to both of you. Thank you for subscribing over on the YouTubes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are definitely not used to getting subscribers, so to get 2 in a week was momentous. But yeah.
Trivia question. You ready for your bonus?
Let's hear it, man.
What?
You better be better than my Disney farts question.
It's not. I came up with it on the fly.
Okay.
What famous Twilight Zone episode did George Miller direct a remake of for the Twilight Zone movie?
I just watched this, and I think...
George Miller being the director of the Mad Max franchise. See, that's one of those instances where it's not working.
Did he do the Nightmare at... Is it 20,000 feet?
Is that your guess?
That is my guess.
Okay, great. I'll take it
I'm
into
not
account.
sure if that was the one he did, but I think.
John's like, I don't know the name of a Twilight Zone episode.
We don't take gross guttural noises
Take
as
Kylie
official
to your
guesses.
types around
So.
The one with the coin.
Two-Face.
Spooky Penny.
Yeah, Spooky Penny.
Okay, Spooky Penny. All right, those are the guesses. If you have a guess, let us know over on Instagram, and we will give you that answer next week. But for now, we're going to get started with Trivia Pursuit. I will read a question to John. John will read one to Anthony. Anthony will read one to me. We'll
In
go
typical
through
fashion.
all 6 categories until we crown a winner or winners.
Till one of us is crowning.
John, are
Like
you ready
Emily Browning.
with your
I'm crowning like Emily Browning.
monster
Yes.
question?
I'm ready.
Okay. What is the name of the hunchbacked assistant to Dr. Frankenstein in Frankenstein from 1931?
Oh, I don't think that it's.
My name is Jeff.
Oh no! Got yourself a Frankenstein.
I this is wrong. I'm gonna say Igor though.
It is Fritz.
Yeah.
Like putting on the Fritz.
That's not what that is at all.
Yeah, but you can remember that because in Young Frankenstein they have putting on the Ritz parody.
Put on the roots.
See? That'll help you remember it next time. I got you, dude. It's called
If you're blue and you don't know the answer to the trivia question, why don't you go
to Fritz.
to Hunchback Fritz?
See? Rolls off the tongue.
Anthony, who directed 28 Weeks Later from 2007?
Oh, you son of a beach ball.
Danny Doyle.
I'm gonna say it was.
I'm firmly saying Tugger's on the table.
Oh shit!
Oh, if I guess this right,
Yeah.
If you pull this off, he'll pull you off.
I'm gonna say it was renowned director Alan Smithy.
It is Juan Carlos Fresnadillo.
Duh.
I don't even believe that's a real person.
Yeah, that's Spanish for Alan Smithy.
Yeah. Unlike Alan Smithy, who is 100% real. All right, for your equally tough question, Tone, and there are no Tuggers on the table. What German electronic band composed the music for Near Dark from 1987?
Even to break out Old Reliable?
Rammstein.
There might be members of Rammstein that weren't born when that movie came out.
Du hast mich. You could have at least gone with like Deutsch Punk. The answer is Tangerine Dream.
Oh my god! What the fuck?
Wasn't that a joke that we had back in the day? Like that
Well, we would always guess that or
Goblin.
yeah,
Yeah.
or the Goblin,
Or Lady Goblin.
or goblins, yeah. Some form of goblin.
and then eat Goblin D's nuts. Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I remember. Hey, got it. Yeah.
Got him. All right. Well, that was a fucking shit round, huh?
Yeah, sure was.
We're moving into
The eyeball zone.
Nope. What is it?
Gore / disturbing.
Damn, he got it. All right, John, in Videodrome, 1983.
Fuck.
On what organ is the malignant tumor developed by people who view the broadcast?
You know, it's not actually a tumor.
It's not a tumor. What is that?
I gotta stop.
Trying to do more guttural noises?
Gotta stop. Well, is it on the old thumb right here?
It is the brain. Yeah. Tough luck, buddy.
Mm-hmm. Anthony, in Freaks from 1932, what is the name of the circus strongman that trapeze artist Cleopatra conspires with to murder Hans?
Directed by
Todd Browning.
Todd Browning. Hello.
If only that had been the question that
Yeah.
I needed to answer.
Name of the strongman.
Strongman.
I'm gonna say
It's Ivana Pump You Up.
Bilbert Strongman.
Oddly enough, it's Joe Rogan.
That's where he got his name.
Drink my bone broth.
I'm gonna say it is Bonesaw McGraw.
He's a country singer.
Hercules. Name is Hercules. Honey, don't you mean Huncules?
Heracles.
0 to hero. Tone for your Gore / disturbing question. In Teef from 2007,
Teef.
which character is not subject to the titular trait of Don O'Keefe, because it rhymes with teeth. Ryan, Bill, Toby, or Brad?
Oh, man.
Come on, man. This is your favorite flick. I've actually been meaning to watch it because it's one of those movies that
You've seen it.
We've seen it? Did we watch it? Mm-hmm. Was it back when we lived like a long time ago?
No, we watched it with my sister. It was hella weird.
That is very weird. Maybe that's why I blocked it from my memory.
It was just like them fucking, and my sister was just like, I was like, oh, that's kind of weird.
Like,
This is fine.
Actually, no. Could we not do this?
When we went down there for that trip. Yeah, I think we watched it. Anyway, hit me with the names again.
The names are Ryan, Bill, Toby, or Brad, and the question is, which of them is not a victim of the pussy teeth?
Toby.
The answer is Bill.
Should have known. Toby's fuck.
Man, so 2 rounds of blank.
2 rounds of blank. John, you might be
Wait,
able
so
to get this
none
one.
of us have gotten a single one right?
Yeah.
Sure
God
haven't.
damn. Well, I mean, that's better than...
A 0-way tie would be fucking fantastic.
It'd be a new level of low.
Yeah, it's like Ant-Man and Quantumania. Woo! All right, psychological John. In a voice cameo role, what actor played the fiance of protagonist Michelle in 10 Cloverfield Lane from 2016? This one I knew.
I have a guess. If he doesn't get it, I'm not 100% sure if this is right, but I think I vaguely remember.
I'm reserved,
Yeah.
I'm trying to stop with the noises. It's very difficult. It's like an addiction.
You said famous person? Famous celebrity?
Did I say that? Just says voice cameo role.
There's no fucking way that it could be Alan Smithy again, right?
Is it J.J. Abrams?
That
it-
is incorrect.
Bradley Cooper?
That is correct.
Rocket Raccoon himself.
If you watched it now, you'd be like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's actually doing the Rocket voice. It's implied that Mary Elizabeth Winstead was dating Rocket Raccoon before the events of 10 Cloverfield
Fucking
Lane.
lucky ass raccoon.
Hey, don't call Ewan McGregor a raccoon.
Anthony, in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from 1931.
It's actually Hide.
In Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hide. 1931.
I'll have my Hide.
How many actors portrayed Jekyll and Hide?
One.
Yes.
I was like, that sounds like a trick.
Actor Frederick March performs
yeah.
both roles.
Hey, you're on the board. Congratulations.
Puts me on the board. Puts me on the board. Hey.
With a 3rd round lead.
Tone. What actor played the eccentric millionaire Frederick Lauren in The House on Haunted Hill from 1959? Not to be confused with The Haunted Mansion.
The only thing I think of is Vincent Price.
It is indeed Vincent Price. The price was indeed right.
The price is wrong, bitch.
All right. Anthony and I are tied at 1, and we are moving into the paranormal category. Is that correct, John? Sweet. John, what actor portrayed Professor Jonas in Sinister from 2012?
Vincent D'Onofrio.
And
Yeah, you gotta go.
You got a gabagool.
Gabagool. I'm just a pile of gabagool.
that is correct, sir. Yes.
My name is Jeff. You got a gabagool.
I watched something randomly about him, and he was, I think it was in Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
Where Kubrick was like, get big and like chunky and like shave your head and like, let's see if you could pull that off. And that's basically what he's done for the rest of his career since then. And he was like, yeah, it was the first time I ever did that. It wasn't really something that I wanted to do, but he thought it'd be good for the role, so I went for it. And
He's
kind of the rest is history.
He's so good at being just creepy.
Yeah.
He's one of those actors. It was like we were talking about last week with Philip Seymour Hoffman, where he's just one of those actors where he's able to transform into all different variety of creep. I saw a tweet today actually that D'Onofrio responded to, where somebody had a screenshot of him as the cockroach guy from Men in Black, Kingpin, and
From
his character from Full Metal Jacket. And it
Private
was like,
Pile.
Yeah, and it was like Vincent D'Onofrio characters that confuse me sexually. and D'Onofrio like responded to it, and he was like, "This is it was something like, oh, this is strange, but also very flattering."
What a cool guy.
Hey, you're on the board though, huh?
I'll take it. Anthony, what is the gender of the child the Baxters lose at the beginning of Don't Look Now from 1973?
It is their daughter. It's their daughter, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
See,
So she wears the coat.
So then, what would her gender be?
Uh,
What gender are you, daughter?
well, I mean, I didn't want to assume, but
Right, fair enough.
A girl, a female, a little lady.
A young lass. A Sheila.
or Nora Jones.
Anyway,
All right, Tone,
you've got 2 points.
for your paranormal question, Ouija, origin of evil,
Again with this fucking Ouija, dude.
Flanagan shenanigans.
from 2006, was based on a product. See, they say product here and not game, which upsets me. Was based on a product sold by what company?
Oh man.
You're between two, right?
Yeah. I will say Milton Bradley.
It is.
Hasbro.
Yeah,
Is it Mattel?
Oh, Mattel.
It's Hasbro.
Oh. I didn't even think of Mattel. Fuck. All right.
You almost had it, bro. Yeah, Hasbro. Weird to think that the Ouija movies and I think the Transformers movies and Battleship were all like in the same, or all in the Hasbro cinematic
Hey,
universe.
I'm the only one of us who doesn't Hasbro.
Doesn't Hasbro?
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. All right. So you're winning with 2, and John and I got the 1,
Mhm.
and we're moving into the killer category.
Indeed, we are.
John in House of Wax from 53, Professor Henry Gerard is disfigured when Burke sets the museum on fire to collect what type of money?
when you bring the ladies over, is that what you tell them the bedroom's called?
What?
The House of Wax.
I don't like that one very much.
Coming from Mr. Yeah, or whatever.
This is my House of Wax.
Oh.
See?
I'm just thinking.
Great audio.
Yeah. Inspired.
This is what the people don't subscribe for.
Yeah, Erica's gonna be like, never mind.
unsubscribe. Well, let's use a little bit of logic here. So, burn place down to get money.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of 2 things.
Fire sale.
It's either insurance money
Uh-huh.
or gold.
Okay. All right.
Well,
or Bitcoin.
well, because if you're burning the house down,
Uh-huh.
it's either to get the
Talking
insurance.
heads.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's talking heads.
It's either to get the insurance money or it needs to be money that won't burn, which would be solid money, gold.
I see.
So that's my logic. I'm gonna say,
You know, California was founded on the solid money rush.
yeah, I'm gonna say gold.
It is insurance money.
I was right.
Oh, that's fucking funny. Sorry, buddy. You're not out yet. You still got a chance.
You were doing this whole fucking like Sherlock Holmes like slow mo deduction thing, and then you just fumbled right at the end.
I dropped my solid gold bricks.
Yeah, he had it too.
My schwinky's made of gold.
Anthony, what is the name of the fictional Canadian mining town in which My Bloody Valentine from 1981 is set?
That's a good question.
Isn't it some dumb shit like Valentine Bluffs? Valentine's Bluff? Valentine Bluffs? Am I somewhere close?
Yeah,
Am I
yeah,
in the
where
vicinity?
we placed the yes, buddy?
What?
Is it Valentine's Bluff or Valentine Bluffs?
Or Valentine's Bluffs.
I mean, I'm gonna guess it's a singular bluff, so maybe Valentine's Bluff.
It's Valentine Bluffs, but either way, you got it.
If you tried to fucking be like,
I wasn't going to. You got the 2 words. You just put the S in the wrong place.
it's Valentine's with 2 S's and then bluff.
It's valid.
It's Valentine's, but it's spelt in leet speak.
Tone. American Psycho from 2000 was based on a novel of the same name by what author? Come on, Mr. Books.
Got a degree in them. Insurance money. Gold.
Written by Jeff Firesale.
No, it's one of those 3-name fucks.
Yeah.
It's
Come from a
I
foreign
mean, maybe.
yeah.
I mean, maybe.
Fuck.
Possibly.
I want to say like it's Easton Ellison, like Bret Easton Ellison.
I'm going to give it to you because...
It's Bret Easton Ellis.
Yeah, it's just
Ellis?
Ellis. Yeah,
Oh.
but Bret Easton Ellis. But yeah, I mean, for being a 3-name fuck, you got all the names. So
All
Like,
right.
you're like from one 4-name fuck to a 3-name fuck. Like,
it's another one of those books I've been meaning to read for years. I've never gotten around to.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so then John, you're sitting at 1,
1, 2, 3.
3. Yeah. Okay. Cool. And we're moving into international. John, in Pulse from 2001,
Okay.
what room is referenced on the crumbled printer paper found at the home of a victim?
What room?
Is this Cairo?
It is Cairo. Yes.
Stop with the tapping too. You're killing the listeners. When you start farting, I'm just trying to think.
He's been secretly communicating with the audience through Morse code.
Yeah. Help me. There. I'm trapped in a.
I'm being held hostage.
Yes.
By rogue trivia questions.
I'll say it's the living room of the apartment in the beginning of the movie.
It is the Forbidden Room,
Also known as the living room in the apartment at the beginning of the movie.
the Disappointments Room.
Yeah, I remember because I just watched this a couple weeks ago, and that's like because they were everybody was taping up the rooms.
Yeah.
And they're like, can't go in there because that's where the ghosts are.
It's forbidden.
Kind of made me wonder if Flanagan was at all inspired, because it reminded me a little bit of like the secret red room or whatever in Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah. You could definitely be inspired by worse. That's for sure.
For the win, sir.
Anthony, the so-called martyrs are meant to reveal the secrets of what to the sinister organization in Martyrs from 2008?
The afterlife?
It is the afterlife?
And god damn it, they don't reveal the secrets to us, the audience.
It's on purpose.
Left me hanging. Now I gotta go fucking get my own skin peeled off so I can figure out what the meaning of the afterlife
Motherfucker, they
is.
gonna peel you like a grape.
like that video where they did surgery on that grape. Oh god, that'd be awful. Just this like a little robot claw. It's like slowly peeling my whole body. Oh man. Somebody make that movie. Tone in Let the Right One In from 2008. Oh no, not In. Just Let the Right One In from 2008 was based on a novel of the same name by what author? You get 2 back-to-back book questions. Tugger's on the table for this one. Faux show.
John.
Never mind.
You can't. I've never seen.
Like Levenquist.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, turn the cameras off.
We knew it was bound to happen at some point.
And John isn't even the craziest part. But as soon as he said it, I was like, oh fuck, he actually knows this, right?
I do. I have one of his other books called Handling the Undead.
Yeah, so it's John Ajvide Lindquist. So
Okay,
you got it. Holy shit. Well, we'll have to
funny.
we'll have to settle that debt after the show.
Subscribe to our OnlyFans.
Oh.
Let's just say on next week's show, Tone's going to be a lot more relaxed.
Just
You're
like
like
the snaggletooth.
You're like, hey, do you want us to read your trivia question? I don't fucking care. I'm good.
All right, well, that's a win.
I'm big chilling,
That's
bro.
a win for us both, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I lost, but
I won't make eye contact. It'll be fine.
yeah, the whole rest of the show we're just like, yeah, so Mad Max.
All right. Well, yes. Congratulations. I guess technically you're still streaking, so that's somewhere in the realm of 3.5, I guess.
Yeah, 3.5.
This is also what he's going to be dealing with.
Come on, dude. That's going to wrap it up for trivia. We are going to take a short, much-needed break, and we will be right back.
Join the Creep Cult. $5 a month at patreon.com/Porcelain Peak for exclusive content, merch discounts, and more. Join the Creep Cult. $5 a month at patreon.com/Porcelain Peak for exclusive content, merch discounts, and more.
Hey, you want to see something really scary?
Welcome back. We're going to go ahead and get started. Yeah, start your engines. Sunday.
Someday.
We're going to talk about Mad Max to kick off March Madness. So, if you don't know Mad Max, now's a good time to jump in because these movies are pretty good, I will say, just off the rip.
This one's available in a ton of different places. One of them, I think you can watch it for free on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. So if you don't know,
Probably.
1979 Australian dystopian action movie directed by George Miller, who you might know from things like
Babe
The
Super
rest
Baby
of the
City.
Mad Max series.
Babe and Happy Feet.
And Happy Feet 1 and 2.
I think The Witches of Eastwick, is that
Witches
right?
of Eastwick,
Yeah,
yep.
and starring Mel Gibson, who you might know from South
Being a
Park.
racist piece of shit.
Yeah, that,
Wasn't going to say it, but yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So
Passion of the
directed by
Christ.
George Miller, screenplay by him and James McCausland.
Yup.
And yeah, we got we got Mel Gibson. we
got Mad Max as Mad Max.
Joanne Samuel, Hugh Keys Byron, and Steve Bissell, Tim Burns, and Roger Ward. And this movie was a huge box office success. At the time, it was the most profitable film. And it was made for...
Ever?
Yeah, well, like between budget and gross.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah. So it was made somewhere between 350,000 to 400,000, and it made 100 million. So yeah,
That's crazy.
That's pretty fucking good,
Yeah,
especially
and those,
for like just
those
a
numbers, you know,
random-ass
if
movie.
I looked briefly at like what the budget was adjusted for inflation, and it was closer to somewhere like, you know, $1.5 million maybe. So that gross that it made adjusted for inflation, I'm sure is a crazy amount of money still. But
So you want to break down the plot for us just as lightly as possible? It's kind of weird.
yeah, it's a very strange film. So yeah, I mean, what I was going to say right off the bat is that if you haven't seen Mad Max, then you have 110% seen something that's inspired by this franchise, because this
South
kind
Park
of
does it. I'm sure a bunch of other stuff does it.
yeah, a
Indian
million things.
Desert,
But really, I think
like the Raider
the
Nation
interesting
is
thing we'll be going back and talking about
based off Mad Max.
the interesting thing we'll be going back and talking about this movie specifically, because it is very different while also being kind of similar to what the rest of the franchise would become. But yeah, so this movie is set in a sort of post-apocalyptic Australia.
Yeah, it's almost like the apocalypse is kind of still happening. It's like
Yeah.
the tail end of being apocalypse. It's almost post.
There's just
Yeah.
a group of people who are like a little off, like their expiration date passed, but you still leave them in the
That's
fridge.
just Australians.
Ooh, that's an indictment, my friend. But like, there are some people who are just kind of like a little weird. The police force is all like leather daddies.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
Max...
so it's a police force, and they're patrolling what's left of the desert, and there's a biker gang
Yeah,
they're trying to
so
stop it.
Max...
It's super weird.
Rockatansky?
Rockatansky?
Max Rockatansky is Mel Gibson's character. He is one of these police officers. He has a partner named Goose. Lots of weird Top Gun parallels in this movie
talk
also.
to me, Goose.
Speaking of weird Tom Cruise parallels, Tom Cruise or Mission Impossible has the stupidest name for their group.
Oh, the IMF?
Yeah,
Impossible
and-
Mission Force.
And then these guys, or what is it? The MFP, the Main Force Patrol.
Yeah.
It's like, who comes up with these?
Yeah, it sounds very, basic future, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, all they had to throw in there is, like, space. Like, basic Space Force Patrol. But yeah, they are the police, and they're all part of this kind of, they run their whole operation out of this rundown, like, disgusting-looking police factory. The
Yeah, they're like
police
the-
chief is, like, this fucking Bronson-looking, like, big, bald, mustachioed guy. I think he
Just
is.
hang
Yeah.
out with his shirt off, fucking doing botanist things.
Yeah, so they are like kind of the last line
Yeah.
between these crazy fucking hoodlum bikers and
Well, they're like the last line of-
innocent.
The government, really.
Yeah, and the innocent Australian population. So the main leader, toe cutter of this like evil biker gang is actually, I think we might have mentioned this before, the same actor who returns to play
For-
a Morton
Morton
Joe
Joe.
in Fury Road.
I was wondering because I knew that we had talked about it. And I was like, which one comes back?
Yeah, and I think he's fucking great in this, and also obviously as a Morton Joe, so it's cool that he got to play two freak characters in Mad Max movies. But yeah, that's basically the plot. The whole like first act of the movie is pretty much nonstop chase scenes, and they're fucking incredible, and lots of just things crashing and this biker gang doing just like escalatingly horrific things to random people around the Australian
What Toe Cutter does to
countryside.
that ice cream is pretty criminal.
Yeah, but then he gets a nice little kick in the nards. So that's the first act of the movie, and we kind of in the background have Max sort of trying to like follow around and chase after this biker gang.
Yeah, and he's also responsible for the death of one of their members who escaped from
Knight Rider.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's who we open the movie with. And so that's the first part of the movie. And then the second part of the movie, we kind of take a detour off all of the crazy action stuff.
That's a car pun.
Yeah. Also what happens in the movie, where we take a detour.
Diane.
You happy with yourself?
Yeah.
So we drift slightly into...
Sorry, we Tokyo Drift.
We Tokyo drift over into the whole kind of love story between Max and his wife and his son in this movie. I get confused because in later Mad Max movies, it's a daughter that he lost. So and they kind of just
I don't know.
But yeah, I think it's his son, and they call him Sprague, which is apparently a Australian slang just for like a kid. So yeah,
It's a Australian for fuckstain.
and at this point in the discussion, if you haven't seen Mad Max, we're gonna go into some spoilers. The movie is 100 million years old, so if you haven't seen it, I don't know what you're doing with your life. But yeah, so we follow his family for a little bit. Classic, build them up so that we kind of care about them and see how much he cares about them, so that they can be viciously ripped away from him. And so yeah, the Toe Cutters gang ends up catching up with them because they've been kind of hunting Max and his family because, like you said,
Yeah, almost unrelated because they end up running into the wife at some point.
Oh, and that's when the ice cream thing happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they kind of
Yeah.
taunt her, and yeah, they're just being assholes, and they start chasing after her. She gets Max in the car, and they basically follow him to this farmhouse.
So I'm not even sure that they know Max is involved until what happens, and then he becomes really involved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Needless to say, the plot is not the coolest or most.
It's not
put
the shining
together
star
Yeah,
of
it's not the
this.
shining star of this movie. It's a bit confusing, but eventually we work our way around to what turns Max into Mad Max, which is right before he went off on this little vacation with his family. He was so disgusted with the depravity of, basically what he was having to deal with in his police work that he tries to resign from the police force. He goes off and has this little getaway with his family. The evil catches up with him. His family is run down in the road, very tragically, and he goes mad and decides to get revenge. And the last
Revenge he does get.
and the last part of the movie is him meticulously and kind of randomly just driving around and hunting down all of the Toe Cutters gang, and one by one killing them off, culminating in a classic na 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 na.
Yeah, he does. He's like he basically he handcuffs this dude to a vehicle that is about to explode, sets it on a rough timer by putting a lighter near the fuel, and then throws him the hacksaw and says, you got two options,
10 minutes to cut through the metal,
or 5 minutes to cut through your ankle.
Yeah, and
that's such a fucking dope line too.
Yeah.
I was like, that's brutal. Way to go,
yeah,
Max.
this was like the one of the few plot points that I remembered about this movie was this scene at the very end, because I remember how fucking badass I thought it was when I first saw this. But I also did a little bit of research, and I guess that same like trap concept shows up in the Watchmen graphic novel. I guess Rorschach at one point like handcuffs a guy to a radiator or something and gives him a hacksaw and then starts his house on fire and says, you can cut through your arm or your leg or whatever, or you can try to cut through the metal, but your house is going to burn down, you're going to die. So
what I really liked about this movie, all the action is pretty fantastic, especially considering the budget, and I think you could talk a little bit more about that. But I also thought that the relationship between Max and his wife that was acted really well. Like, they seemed like a real couple. I was like, this is pretty legit.
yeah.
One thing that I like that they set up early on in this that ends up being a through line through the entirety of the franchise is the relationship between the people and their vehicles. I think that like there's also a video game that spins off of Mad Max as well. That's all about like vehicle based things. And I think that like the way that they talk about this car, that's like the one that they've like put together with different parts and scraps and shit at the place. Yeah, the way that they talk about this car, it reminds me a lot of being excited about watching Fury Road and like I said, that stuff we'll talk about in future weeks. But
no, that's a really good point. Yeah, and I was thinking the same thing. I was like, oh, this feels like a conversation that Nick Holt would be having with one of the other characters.
Yeah.
When they're like,
Well, yeah, and down to like the one car has the interior that's like all white fur, and like it's also interesting that like all of the villains. Like, I think this is something that really got set up really well in this movie and then carries on to its, like, extreme in the future movies with, like, characters like, Humongous and Immortan Joe and everything. But the villains being these larger-than-life, like, sometimes, like, really weirdly eloquent characters who are just, like, all talking like it's some sort of medieval times, like, thing. And instead of dueling on horses and jousting, they're doing it with cars. And the way down to the way they drive, even to when they attack the couple in the one car, you kind of see a little bit of the aftermath of what happens to that couple, but the thing that really conveys how insane the Toe Cutter Gang got, is how the condition of the car is when you find it afterward, and it's like completely ripped apart and there's pieces of it all over the road. That it more so than seeing the state that the people are in tells you like, oh, they did some insane shit. And so yeah, really the cars become as much of a character as the characters that are driving the cars.
that's a really good point. Yeah, I liked that a lot. I also like that it is confusing. Like you mentioned this earlier, Anthony, but this movie throws you into this weird world that you don't know anything about, except that it's a few years in the future from what it says at the beginning. Where I feel like other movies would be like, here's a title crawl of like, in the year blah, 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 this happened, and now this is the after. You know what I mean? Like telling you what's going on, or they would have like the Harrison Ford voiceover or something. You know what I mean? And this movie does not hold your hand in any way, to the point where it is a little bit confusing about what is supposed to be happening and what we're watching. But I think once you get that's like, this is the last form of government and these are like outlaw gangs and it is post-apocalyptic, then you're able to kind of just follow along. But for a minute I was like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, and some of it is just a necessity of like the budget of the movie. So when they originally had the concept for this, Max wasn't going to be a police officer and the movie wasn't going to be post-apocalyptic or take place in the future. Part of the inspiration for this movie in general is that George Miller was an EMT. Like he worked in the medical field pretty much right up until this, and partially into the production of this movie. That's part of how he financed this, was by going around in an ambulance with the other filmmaker that he was working with, and they would just do emergency calls to make money to fund this movie. And he had seen so many horrific car and motorcycle accidents that, similar to somebody like Savini, who is so fucking good at what he does because he was in the Vietnam War and saw real gore and people being torn apart, it affected Miller so deeply that he wanted to make a movie about like the recklessness of these drivers and all that. So it started as that, and originally Max was going to be a reporter who was basically just going from like horrific car crash to horrific car crash and documenting what was happening and seeing like the depravity of this world. But the budget for this ended up being, so low that they couldn't afford like nice buildings to film in or like nice towns to get permits to film in. They could pretty much only film this on back roads in Melbourne and in like rundown disused factories and stuff. And so they were just like, well, let's just make it slightly post-apocalyptic to cover up, to explain why everything looks so run down and fucked up. So that wasn't even necessarily the intention for the movie. And also, I guess the original treatment for this was like 250 pages long, and that got cut in half, which is what this movie is, and then that got trimmed down even further in the edit. So this could have potentially been a more expansive, like, explaining everything that's going on and explaining all the inner workings of this police force and all this stuff. And I think really, like a lot of these, early films by these directors that are super low budget, they just had to try to tell the story with as best they could with as little resources as they could. Pretty much all of the extras in this movie were paid in beer. I listened to the comment. I think it might be the only commentary that's available for this, but it was a commentary with the cinematographer, like a Mad Max historian, and then like 3 or 4 of the stunt coordinator guys on this. And yeah, they talked about how they like the whole toe cutter biker gang, and pretty much all of the bikers in this movie are an actual biker gang from Australia, and they couldn't afford to fly these guys from Sydney, where they were based, to Melbourne, and Australia is a big place, and they had to drive their motorcycles while in costume all the time with their prop weapons on.
Fuck.
Like from Sydney to Melbourne. And there's a joke in this movie where at one point Goose gives somebody a get out of jail free card. That was an actual thing that the actors in this movie had to carry around with them, because most of this was shot without permission from the police. So like most of these scenes they didn't have permits for, and so they would just like go out to an overpass and shoot real quick and then sweep all the glass and debris off and clean everything up themselves after. Until eventually the cops caught on and were actually really interested in what was going on in the movie and started helping them by shutting down roads and stuff, and actually cooperated with the production. But yeah, they had to carry around these cards so that if they got pulled over by a cop and they're in these fucking either weird like future cop outfits or they've got like some crazy weapon on them or something, they had a card that explained like, we're shooting a movie, this is what it's about, this is why I'm dressed like this. And that's how really guerrilla this whole experience was. But when you listen to these stunt guys talk about how they filmed this, I mean, it's absolutely insane. Really, you don't see it super often now, except for like Tom Cruise's real life stunts in the Mission Impossible movies. Mm-hmm. But these it's so cool listening to these, like, I don't know how old they are now, but they sound, these older Australian guys who are reminiscing about like, yeah, I had my face like an inch away from the asphalt going at 90 miles an hour, because a lot of these shots are, the camera's right by the road, and they're going
crazy.
Like, or there's a scene where it's over the shoulder of a guy driving a motorcycle. That's just the dude, the stunt coordinator, like the cinematographer, like sitting on the back of the motorcycle with the camera, and the motorcycle's going 100 miles an hour, and he's just leaned over like this trying to get a shot that has the speedometer in it and everything. And they didn't have like safety teams or anything like that. They were just they had like 14 cars to use, and they would swap out tires and parts and stuff to have certain cars stand in for other cars, and then they would just wreck them all, like just do insane stuff. At one point they strapped an Australian Navy rocket to one of the cars for one of the stunts in the beginning, and it flew off the car and ended up chasing the crew for like a quarter mile.
Holy
this
shit.
Like fucking rocket. So a lot of people almost died on this. There are several stories of people going like, of these guys going like, yeah, if I hadn't, slightly corrected here or had this like thing tied to me, I would have just died on that movie.
But it makes for some dope fucking shots.
Yeah.
And we get to see pieces of how Miller's using the camera carry over. Like there's some of those like crazy zooms that he does where it gets really close really fast, and I think we see that later in the rest of the movies too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what's really interesting is, as per usual, we have this discussion anytime we watch something that is, a low budget darling, related to box office darling, that
No.
That's a cousin that we don't really talk about.
it creates limitations, and those limitations sometimes spawn something that was better than what you intended to create in the first place. And while
Just not the movie Spawn.
Yeah, 100%. But the idea that he came up with originally, I don't think that's a bad idea. I don't think it would have been nearly the success story that this was. And like I said, the fact that it spawned a franchise that was still able to pull in a massive box office draw and be one of the biggest spectacles I've ever seen in my life, this far away from when that movie was released, I think is pretty insane. Like I said, it all kind of comes to the testament of taking what you were given and running with it, and then being able to then continue to act on that in a way that makes sense for the world you've created, rather than being like, well, now that I have the money, now that I've made this super successful film, I'm going to start to try to file in the things that I wanted to have in the original one. They're like, no, let's fucking steer into the skid that we've created here, and let's make some of the weirdest fucking movies that have ever been made in the action genre. And I think it's, like I said, they sell themselves. I mean, if you like cool car shit, fucking explosions, fucking weird dialogue, fucking like Shakespearean ass type shit.
Weird people.
Yeah, weird people in
Pretty
general.
much all of the actors in this movie are Shakespearean trained actors.
Yeah.
Like legitimately.
You 100% can tell based on the way that they deliver their dialogue. But I think that the fact that they were willing to just be like, all right, we kind of found this weird territory that no one's really touching, so let's run with it and make some cool shit, is just inspiring.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, post-apocalyptic stuff now is like every other week. You know what I mean? And we got like the YA subgenre of that for a while too.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like it's interesting that, like I said earlier, if you haven't seen Mad Max, you've definitely seen stuff that's been inspired by this franchise, and for that to have come mostly just from budgetary limitations, and then having that be such a trend-setting thing that, like you said, now everything is post-apocalyptic. But also, I think part of how this ended up the way that it was, and strayed away from the whole reporter thing, is that it was a collaboration from the get-go. Miller was working with the Byron Kennedy, the other filmmaker that he had met in film school. They were the guys together who drove the ambulance around to raise money for this. Miller was doing the actual medical stuff, and Byron Kennedy was just doing the driving. But they collaborated on putting this together, and then they decided they needed a screenwriter. And you had mentioned him earlier, but James McCausland. There's probably like a really cool Australian way to pronounce that. McCausland, mate. But McCausland. So Miller, he didn't really know how to get a screenwriter for the movie. He had just seen that on a lot of other successful movies, screenwriters were people who had started out in the like newspaper business, writing columns. So he just approached this guy, McCausland, who had been writing for an Australian paper, and was like, hey, you want to write a screenplay? He had never written one before. And he was heavily inspired by an actual 1973 oil crisis that happened in Australia. He said there were further signs of the desperate measures individuals would take to ensure mobility. A couple of oil strikes that hit many pumps revealed the ferocity with which Australians would defend the right to fill a tank. Long queues formed at the stations with petrol, and anyone who tried to sneak ahead in the queue met raw violence. George and I wrote the Mad Max script based on the thesis that people would do almost anything to keep vehicles moving, and the assumption that nations would not consider the huge cost of providing infrastructure for alternative energy until it was too late. Which is crazy to think that, how
accurate,
pertinent that is
now,
to to what we're going through right now, where people are just like, fuck it, I'm gonna drive my big ass crazy souped up truck, and I don't care how that it's billowing big clouds of black smoke from behind, because witness me as I veer through highway lanes. It is like fucking Mad Max sometimes out there, and I'm driving my little Hyundai, like, witness me. But yeah, like they were obviously heavily inspired by that, and then I think it's interesting you get that little hint of the toe cutter gang like stealing the gas from the tanker truck
Yeah.
in this, and then that
And it's just
obviously becomes a
subtle.
huge part of the what the post-apocalypse is all about in the future movies, which is gas and then water.
Well, yeah, I think that's where I was like, this movie is so different because it seems like it's still fairly connected to, I guess at the time, like current society.
Reality
But as we
a little
move
bit.
forward, as we move forward, as we move forward, seems like it's way more into the apocalypse, like the post-apocalypse. And that's what I was going to ask you guys. Like, are these all supposed to be connected? Because I know 1, 2, and 3 are all supposed to be like one after the other, right? Essentially, and then 4, I know it's not Mel Gibson, but is it supposed to be like the same timeline? Because it seems so far removed.
I think also George Miller don't consider any of these movies to actually be sequels to each other, because the world is so different between all of the movies. Like, yes, it's the desert, but the motivations of the characters are very different, and then also like actors show up multiple times as different characters. There's a guy in the Road Warrior who also shows up in Thunderdome but as a different character. There's a guy in this movie that shows up in the next movie as a different character. And there's just a lot of stuff and then also, like I said, at some point it switches to Max lost a daughter, and so really like the continuity outside of he gets shot in the leg in this one, and then for all the future movies he has like the like a squeaky leg brace thing on. So there's little stuff like that, the car being the same, like the Interceptor or whatever. There's little things that kind of make you think they would be connected, but I think George Miller has said that he never really considered these, because with each movie he just wanted to do something new and crazier than the last one, and so he was like, I don't get hung up on the continuity.
Yeah.
Except for, I guess, the new one.
Yeah, I don't think that this is anything to do with anything, but I like to kind of pretend my own little headcanon that
That'll be a cool name for a Mad Max villain.
Yeah, headcanon. I like to think that it's like there's somebody who's like telling stories, like secondhand stories about Max, and so that's the reason why like everyone is like a little different.
I feel like I've heard that. Was that we probably watched the same YouTube video, unless you just like have a parallel thought, because I saw something about that one time where somebody had a theory where it was like, yeah, each one is like a story about Max being told, and it may not necessarily be exactly what happened, but they're like, he's almost become like folklore as the movies go on, and so that's why
I've never seen that video, but that's kind of the vibe that I get.
I think that that's probably spot on with how George feels about it too. My friend George, but
is he Australian?
He is. Yeah, and Mel Gibson is technically American. He was born in the United States, but then moved to Australia, and Miller had originally wanted to cast an American actor because he thought that would get more eyes, checking it out. Because at the time, before this came out, there really wasn't an Australian film industry. They pretty much only did art films, which is why this movie was hard to finance, and he had to raise it, driving a fucking ambulance. But he ended up lucking out with kind of the best of both worlds with casting Gibson. But what I didn't know is that for a large amount of time that this movie was out, everyone in this was dubbed over.
Oh.
Gibson was dubbed over with like an American voice actor, even though I don't think his accent is like that intense in this movie but apparently people had a really hard time understanding the Australian accents when they watched this.
Really?
And I don't know if it's just because one of my favorite podcasts is two Australian guys, and I just watch a lot of stuff with Australian people, and so I don't know if that makes a difference, but it didn't bother me at all.
I didn't either, but I am the same way. I watch a lot of Australian stuff.
Yeah, one of my favorite Smash players is Australian.
Yeah, but a couple other things here that I thought were interesting. So Miller said that his interest when he was writing Mad Max was to make a silent movie with sound.
Okay.
In that he wanted to employ the highly kinetic images reminiscent of Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd, with the narrative itself being basic and simple, which I think he really succeeded in, especially with the undercranking stuff when they're driving, where like they'll undercrank the camera so that it looks like they're driving a lot faster, and you get kind of that like silent era, sped up movement. There's that, and then just the fact that these are pretty much all the actors did their own stunts. There's a few instances where they got in a more professional motorcyclist when the character had the helmet on, but like the guy who played Goose, he pretty much got cast in the role because he could drive a motorcycle, and like all those bikers are actually doing their stunts, and so that feels very Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd. And I can definitely see like how this would be a silent film with sound, because it really
especially
is.
when you get to Fury Road.
Yeah, he
Max
barely
is
talks
yeah.
in that movie. It's like it's just guttural noises. That's what you were doing. You were on theme,
Yeah,
right?
no, 100%. That's definitely it for sure. That definitely doesn't happen every other week.
Well, go ahead.
So I wanted to mention kind of the sore thumb, I think.
The middle of this movie.
The middle of the movie, yes. But I think the biggest problem that I think I have with this film is the music.
The
music
especially during the love stuff, it's very like corny, like saxophone. Like,
So Brian May was the composer, not Brian May from Queen, but Brian May, who has composed music for a ton of films, and I think he was in his like 60s or 70s at the time with this, but like it's all like very like short bursts. There's nothing that really is like the soundtrack of the film or anything like that. It's just like little short bursts of like weird instrument flourishes, and it just doesn't feel very well done. It reminds me of like way bygone era of film, or even like old television.
yeah,
where
a lot of
have,
old
like,
movies like had constant music, and it was constantly like big orchestral stuff, and that's one of those things that doesn't always work for me when I'm watching an older movie, is like how overbearing the music can be. But I do think that in this movie, while the music when it's playing may not work as well, there are a lot of parts of this movie where it's just complete silence.
Yes.
Like characters just
I
standing
do
there
like that.
talking, and there's no music. And to me, that is great, especially compared to all of the loud, crazy shit that's happening in all of the car chases. To have these moments where it's just two characters standing like in a field and talking or whatever, I think is a really nice choice to kind of, because the movie really does have, you have your high peak in the beginning, and then you kind of lull a little bit, and you're kind of in a little false sense of security, and then it pops back up again and gets crazy. And but yeah, like also I wasn't as tuned into the music because I was listening to a commentary, so I didn't necessarily always pick up on when the music might have not really gelled with me.
So did you hate it?
the
music part of it.
the
Or
music.
You just were like, thought it was too much.
I thought it was like not well placed.
Okay.
And like I said, I felt like they plugged music in places where like it didn't work as well as it could have, and then also the quality of the music wasn't super great either. It just felt way older than it needed to be for a film that still kind of has some modern sensibilities to it.
I think you would probably imagine something more like I think it's Manfredini's music for like Terminator.
Yeah, exactly. A little more action based.
Yeah, a lot of more like percussion and less like horns and like saxophones and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to talk about where this movie kind of sags, and we've mentioned it, but the middle of the movie, when we shift gears to the love story, it does feel like a hard shift, because it is so much high action and like craziness, and then it's vastly different. It's just so calm, and like they're sitting having picnics and like all kinds of, I think he's like out hunting, right? When they get hurt or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like it feels like a different movie. It almost feels like a weird episode of a TV show that we just got thrown into this kind of soap opera second act, and then it amps back up, but I don't feel like it gets the same momentum as it did at the beginning.
Yeah, and I think also when you go into a Mad Max movie, you probably are expecting something like, the Road Warrior or Fury Road, where it is, once it starts, it doesn't stop really. Like, it just keeps going until the very end. With this, I totally get why you had to develop Max's character. It just feels strange to do it right in the middle of the movie after you've had such a long time of exploring this other stuff. But Miller has always been pretty vocal, or at least the fans who understand these movies have been pretty, like, they understand that these movies aren't actually about Max, even though they're, at least this one is called Mad Max. When Road Warrior came out, I don't think it was originally called Mad Max 2, and then they tacked that on so people would understand what the fuck was going on. But Max is never the main character of any of these movies. He's the guy who kind of wanders through, and then the other weird, interesting characters are the ones that are the showcase, and he is just kind of there to drive from point A to point B, literally, and you know, connect those dots. And I think a lot of people who didn't maybe necessarily understand that was the bit of the Mad Max franchise went into Fury Road. I even remember Matt Abraham, who I used to work with. We used to work with. He was a huge Mad Max fan. He came out of the Fury Road going like, why wasn't the movie about Mad Max? And I'm like, none of the Mad Max movies are about Mad Max.
This one is, though.
Yeah, but that's like to a degree.
And I don't really think the first act of this movie is about Max. I think it's
Max is the capping point, but it's more about Goose and about Knight Rider.
Yeah, to me, Goose is the main character of the movie up until he dies. And then Max kind of just comes in and is like, oh shit, now I got to get revenge for my partner. But he kind of, like I said, he's kind of like background for the whole first act of the movie. And he doesn't even get introduced until
he kills Knight Rider, basically.
Yeah, so
but that happens in the first 5 minutes.
But he's not I don't think he doesn't feel like a character in the first act. Like, it's not until you get to that, to me, until you get to that part where you slow down with his family that you really go like, oh, this is a human being. This is like a person. You don't really get much out of him in that first act. But because I feel like it would have felt less disjointed if we had been following Max's character more. Like, we get brief little bits with him like in bed with his wife or whatever, like little bits.
The stuff with the car, the stuff with his chief and whoever his boss is, like, I'm only doing it one time or whatever, like, we don't have the budget for this. So that's why I'm like, yeah, he's still there.
Yeah, I think that there's a reason why it feels like it's weirdly like a disjointed side thing in the middle, and it's just because I don't think that the focus was on Max in the first act, at least to me. Like, to me, it seems like it's a lot more about the toe cutters and Goose and all that, down to the fact that the poster for this movie, the original poster, the character that's on the front of it is not Max, it's Goose.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can tell by the helmet he's wearing and the knee brace thing that he has. And that was because Mel Gibson just wasn't a known actor, so they weren't marketing the movie off of him. They were marketing it off of the crazy car stunts and all that stuff.
Right.
But yeah, it really does slow down in the middle, and then it picks up enough at the end, and the revenge story is good enough that I feel like it kind of rescues it a little bit. But when you get into that middle territory, you're not really sure where it's going, and it's just him kind of wandering around a farm. You get a little bit nervous.
I get it, though. Like you were saying earlier, it is to help us develop some kind of a relationship with his family.
Well, it's like John Wick. It's like we got to have a reason to care about his revenge. Like, why is he getting revenge?
But I think that I just wanted maybe less of that and a little bit less at the beginning and then just more at the end. Yeah. Like, I wanted more time with revenge because he goes through them pretty quick. Like, he runs 12 of them off the road at one point, and then I was like, okay, 3 left. And then I was like, oh, okay.
Well, that's why I feel like the more logic, I guess the more standard movie way, which would be like the John Wick way to set this up, would be have the first act be this love story part with Max and his family. Maybe having this is going to be pretty much John Wick, having left the police force and he's off with his family and trying to enjoy it and everything. And then maybe we see little flashes of his time, like out fighting the toe cutter gang, or we see little side things with them briefly. And we know they're coming after him. And there's this looming tension of when are they going to find him? And they finally find him, kill his family. Then the whole rest of the movie is his revenge. And we stretch that out and take all of the car stuff from the beginning and make that part of Max's revenge throughout the rest of the movie. And I'm not saying that necessarily would have made for a better movie, but I think it would have made for a movie that made a little bit more sense and was maybe paced a little bit better.
I agree with that.
But again, more standard. Yeah. Maybe that's not what people want.
I do think that having this action-heavy, like, bombastic scene that takes place at the beginning really does grab your attention, though. And I don't think you get through that section without being so impressed by how incredible that first 5-10 minutes of the film are.
Do you think that high makes the low feel even lower?
That's how I feel, because I was like, even I had seen this, but it was several years ago, like maybe closer to when Fury Road came out. And so rewatching it, I was like, holy shit, this movie is fucking incredible for that first 15-20 minutes of all, because of all the
cars twice this week.
Yeah, just of all of the car stuff, like all the stunts and everything, and how fast everything felt, and how just real and gritty everything felt. Yeah, when it got to that middle, I was like, oh no.
There are still some good moments though. I think that like his wife being chased by the toe cutters in multiple different instances. I think there's exciting parts of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's too much that's in between it. And I think that maybe there could have been things cut there that might have potentially shortened the runtime more, or where we could have added additional runtime, like you said, to the end and kind of drawing this revenge plot out a little bit more. Because it really is only like the last like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And 5 of that is taken up by the very last scene, which is probably one of the best scenes of the film, and a great, ending point for where that story is at. But like, I still feel like they could have done a little more to pad that out. I know that they were working with a limited budget and limited vehicles, so they could only do so much so many times before they had nothing left.
Yeah, they talked on that commentary about like, oh yeah, these days you would be able to like build a stunt vehicle that and if shit broke, you would just rebuild it for the next thing, or like you'd have several other cars, and they were like, we couldn't do that here. Like if we trashed a car, like it was done. We couldn't do anything with it. But going back to briefly, just one of the things that I think really works super well with this movie is the way that the violence and the really, really fucked up parts of this movie are handled, which is mostly off screen. And it reminded me a lot of Texas Chainsaw Massacre for a lot of reasons, but this really gave me Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibes in terms of being like an early film in a creator's, in a filmography. And
That Dead Armadillo.
The Dead Armadillo.
The Dead Whale.
But yeah, the fact that Miller, obviously knowing what this violence looks like in real life and seeing horrific accidents, he could have been like, oh yeah, we're going to show just like the Savini level, really fucked up gore. And instead it's implied. And for that reason, it's scarier. Like the attack on the couple to me was horrifying, partially just because all you see is like the dude running naked through the field with like a little bit of blood on his ass. And then just the woman like so petrified that she doesn't even want to let Goose like touch her when they come up, and then how destroyed the car is. And that's what I said, like seeing the state of the car, you understand how much damage the toe cutters can do, and just for fucking like no reason, basically.
Yeah.
And then
I like that idea of like car as metaphor for people.
yeah, and then Goose, his death is really fucked up, and you have this whole emotional thing with the guy who eventually, the reason Max handcuffs him to the car and wants it to explode is to get the literal like burning revenge on the guy who killed Goose. But you see his car start on fire, and there's that whole thing. But then the way that they show him in the hospital, where it's just got that sheet over him with the blue light
And you
underneath,
just see the hand.
and you just see the hand come out, and then you see Max look at him, but you don't get to see what Max sees. And so in your head, you can imagine some horrific Two-Face covering the whole face level thing, whatever you want.
The Crypt Keeper.
To me, I was basically imagining like a skeleton man with like little bits of barbecue on him, like
It's like, oh no.
Or no.
and the way he like storms out and he's like, what, that thing that's in there, like that's not Goose, and storms out of the hospital. To me, that's way scarier, and that's what I think works so well about this movie and something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah, you had the option potentially to show all of that gore and everything, but you didn't need to, and you had the restraint not to.
The mind fills in the rest.
But the mind fills in the rest.
Yeah.
I did want to briefly at the end of this discussion talk about what the public felt about this movie when it came out. So even though it did make a dick ton of money, that's the official industry term for it, a dick ton. Upon its release, it polarized critics. In a 1979 review, the Australian social commentator and film producer Philip Adams condemned Mad Max, saying that it had all the emotional uplift of Mein Kampf. And would
Jesus
and
Christ.
Yeah, like reviewers were fucking brutal back in the day.
I know, right? And
Holy
would
shit.
be, quote, a special favorite of rapists, sadists, child murderers, and incipient Mansons.
I mean, that sounds like...
Man, sons.
Oh,
And we're
Insidious! I do think that this is obviously right in the heart and the center of like the satanic panic and things like that. So obviously, anything that you see someone in leather, any kind of violence, like
And
car culture.
This is exactly like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where it's a movie that really, if you watch it, shows very little violence, but there's so much implied violence that people came out of it thinking they had seen this horrific,
The most sadistic
like,
thing they've ever
depraved
seen. Yeah.
movie, and it really isn't. And then in the United States, Tom Buckley of the New York Times called the film ugly and incoherent, and Stephen King, in his book Dance Macabre, called it a turkey. However, Variety magazine praised the directorial debut by Miller. So yeah, polarized. It was split, but obviously
Now it's not.
Well, and I think a lot of people too. I would be curious if The Road Warrior hadn't come out, if this movie
Would have had the same like
would have had the
appraisal.
same like staying power and still been in the conversation, because I know a lot of people are like, The Road Warrior is how I learned about Mad Max, and I didn't even know there was a first movie in this franchise, which is super easy to understand because the second one, like, they're each very contained. You don't necessarily have to have seen the previous one, but yeah, a ton of people I've seen on YouTube videos and interviews saying like, oh yeah, I grew up with The Road Warrior, had like a Road Warrior poster, had seen the movie a bunch of times, and then found out later in life that there was a Mad Max, like an original movie, or went back and was super disappointed that it wasn't like The Road Warrior. And so obviously like The Road Warrior became the template for the rest of this franchise, and then also just like this whole post-apocalyptic wasteland Borderlands style like aesthetic and everything. So yeah, I'm very curious if this original film had been the only Mad Max movie, do you think people would still be talking about Mad Max?
No, I think you need the additions. I think you need taking things to the next level. I know that we criticize sequelitis very frequently about how we got to do the same thing but do it more bigger. I don't think George Miller does that in Road Warrior, but we'll find out more when we sit down and
I
actually talk
personally
about the
didn't
film.
read into any of the like production or background on Road Warrior, just because I didn't want to like start going into Road Warrior, too much
Absolutely.
while we were talking about this one. I wanted to kind of try to look at it as just its own thing, and then go into Road Warrior and do the research and find out how, like, what made him decide he was going to go in that direction, and what made him decide, okay, we're going to make this really, a desert wasteland with gasoline wars and, all of this stuff.
I think that what you have to do in order to make this movie one that works in a franchise of movies is expand not only the things that are really great about this movie, like you said, the action and the subtlety of things, but also expand the world around it. And I think that that's part of where the success of this franchise comes from. It's just that the world feels so massive.
But this feels like a good jumping off point.
Yes.
Yeah, and I do think it's really cool that basically just Australia has so much open, desolate looking area that, that pretty much inspired this post-apocalyptic thing. And also this movie it created the Australian film industry. Like, this did so well, and obviously was so different from what they had been making previously, that it ended up paving the way for a lot of Australian filmmakers. We talked about the Saw connection.
Yeah.
I was reading to see if there was any like quote from Wan and Winnell about how much this influenced them. I did see a couple articles that had seen this connection and said that it would make sense if they had seen this, because they're Australian and had seen Mad Max probably a bunch in film school and studied George Miller and all that, and so it makes sense that there would be that connection there. But,
I mean, that's the premise of their entire movie.
yeah. So I guess that and a migraine headache were the two things, because Winnell was like, "What if my migraine is a brain tumor?" And then also, what if Mad Max? Put them together.
But yeah, I mean, overall, I enjoyed it. I don't think it's my favorite in the franchise, but it's been a while since I've seen all 4 movies, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, like we said, there's Road Warrior, there's Beyond Thunderdome, there's Fury Road, and there's soon to be Furiosa.
Starring Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yep, she's fucking in everything. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then potentially a sequel, because Furiosa is more of a prequel for just that character.
But yeah, I mean, the fact that George Miller is still making these movies at his age, and the fact that they still include a shit ton of practical stunts and effects, and they've continued to get more and more bombastic. And also, you ask most Mad Max fans what their favorite Mad Max movie is, and the majority of them will say Fury Road now. Like, it's insane because it would have just been Road Warrior forever. Like, most people were like, Road Warrior's the classic. It's the all-time favorite. And then Fury Road pretty much came along and just did Road Warrior on steroids and did it like, you know, even better and crazier. And I'm very excited to go through the rest of this franchise because it's been a while, and they're all fucking awesome.
Yeah.
This one was fucking awesome. I had a great time. Even with the little lulls and the little, like, you know, music things and all that, I still had a great time with it. And I would highly recommend, if you've seen Mad Max and you want to revisit it, if you go online and search for the commentary for this, just one of the first results is this commentary that I listened to. There's a really great Tumblr that uploads director commentaries for like a shit ton of movies, and that's where I found it. So check that out if you're interested. It was really cool, and these guys literally put their lives on the line and blood, sweat, and tears to make it happen. So
Yeah.
That's wild. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. We're going to continue with March Madness next week, talking about Mad Max 2, a.k.a. The Road Warrior. So watch that and tune in with us. And if you haven't already, check out our Patreon episode. We're doing the ABCs of something, and we're watching Battlefield Earth next week, and we just talked about Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. So if that interests you, it's only $5 and you get a shitload of content. But other than that, I have been Tone.
I've been John.
and once again, witness me, internet darling Anthony.
We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.
Keep it creepy. Or Nora George.
What a day. What a glorious day.
Joey.